Alright, let's now turn our attention to the practical application of what we have learned about economic feasibility assessment tools within the field of green engineering. We will explore the concept of levelized cost of energy, LCOE analysis. This involves understanding the economic cost per unit of electricity generated from different energy sources. How do renewable energies compare economically to traditional fossil fuels? Let's dive into their economic characteristic. As we examine the levelized cost of electricity, it is crucial to first understand the basics of electric power grid, how electricity is delivered to consumers. The process begins at the power plant, where electricity is generated. This is a starting point of our electricity supply chain. From here, the electricity must travel long distance to reach the consumers, which is where the transmission system comes into play. High voltage transmission lines carry the electricity over long distance, including across the states and regions to minimize energy loss. At various substations along these transmission lines, transformers step up or down the voltage. For long-distance transmission, the voltage is increased to reduce the energy loss over the distance. Once the electricity nears the consumption points, it goes through a series of neighborhood transformers that step down the voltage to safer, usable levels before it enters the local distribution networks. The final leg of this journey is the distribution system. Here, electricity travels through lower voltage lines to homes and businesses. Smaller pole-mounted transformers in neighborhoods further reduce the voltage to make it safe for home use. This grid, comprising thousands of miles of both high voltage and low voltage power lines, connects numerous power plants to millions of electricity consumers. It is a dynamic system designed not only to meet the current demands, but also to adapt to changing consumption patterns and potential disruptions, ensuring reliability and continuous supply. So let's now shift our focus to the economic structure of operating power plants, specifically looking at the fixed and the variable cost involved in power generation. First, let's talk about the fixed cost. These are expenses that do not vary with the level of output. These include the capital cost, like the expense of building the facility itself and the land cost. In the context of transmission and distribution, these costs are primarily fixed, since the infrastructure costs do not fluctuate with the amount of electricity transmitted. Regulatory costs, such as obtaining siting permits and environmental approvals, also falls into this category. These costs are significant as they vary across the regions and are largely influenced by local regulations and the environmental impact assessment required. Moving on to the variable cost. These costs depend directly on the plant's output level. They include the fuel cost, labor, and the maintenance expenses. For fossil fuels power plants, fuel costs constitute the largest portion of operating cost, given the need for continuous fuel supply. However, in renewable energy systems, like wind or solar, there is no cost for fuel, which shifts the focus to maintenance and the labor cost. As we look toward more sustainable energy solutions, analyzing these costs helps us understand the economic benefit of transitioning to renewable energy sources, which have significantly lower variable costs compared to the traditional fossil fuel plants. Generally, central station generators face a critical balance between capital and operating cost. This trade-off is a key factor in financial decision-making and in the strategic planning of energy resources. Plants with a higher capital cost typically benefit from a lower operating cost over their lifespan. This can include advanced renewable energy technologies such as wind turbines or solar panels, where initial setup costs are high, but the operating expenses are relatively low due to the absence of a fuel cost. On the other hand, generators running on fossil fuel exhibit a different cost dynamics. While they might be cheaper to build, their operating costs are highly sensitive to fluctuations in fuel prices. This sensitivity can lead to significant variability in their economic performance over time. For example, a spike in natural gas prices can drastically increase the operating cost of a gas-fired power plant, impacting the overall cost effectiveness of such installations. Comparing these costs across the different technologies is not always straightforward, but it is essential for making informed decisions about the energy investment. Firstly, fixed costs of a power plants are usually expressed in terms of dollars per kilowatt or dollars per megawatt of generating capacity. These are costs that remain constant regardless of the amount of electricity the plants actually produce. They typically include the expenses related to the construction and the commissioning of the plant, as well as the regulatory and the land cost. On the other hand, the variable costs of power plants are calculated based on the electricity output, expressed in terms of dollars per kilowatt hour or dollars per megawatt hour. These costs fluctuate depending on the level of production and primarily consist of fuel, maintenance, and operational labor cost. To facilitate a comprehensive comparison of power plants with the different technologies, we often use the metric called the levelized cost of energy, or LCOE. LCOE represents the average price per unit of output needed for the plant to break even over the operating lifetime. It effectively levels the playing field by accounting for both fixed and variable cost over the expected lifetime of the plant. So, what exactly is LCOE? It is calculated by dividing the total cost of a project, both capital and operational, by the total amount of electricity the plants produce, adjusted for the time value of money. Imagine we have two power plants that are selling electricity into the same deregulated market and have the same expected operational life. Which plant do you think would be more profitable? It would be the one with the lower LCOE because it means the plant operates more efficiently with the lower average cost per megawatt hour. Let's look at the formula displayed here, where CT represents the capital cost and the MT represents the operational cost incurred in year T. QT here is the total output of the project in year T, and the R is the discounting rate, which reflects the time value of money. This formula helps us solve for the LCOE, which is the energy price at which the net present value of the project is zero, balancing cost and output over time. Understanding this LCOE is very crucial for making informed decisions about which energy project to invest in. As we advance our discussion on the levelized cost of energy, it is essential to consider authoritative sources and the industry benchmark. One such benchmark is provided by Lazard, a leading firm that annually publishes the LCOE analysis. Lazard reports over in-depth evaluation of the comparative cost of generating electricity from the different technologies, both conventional and renewable. The analysis is crucial for stakeholders across the energy sectors to understand shift in the cost effectiveness of varied energy sources over time. All the information is critical tool for policymakers, developers, and the researchers in making decisions about the energy investment. While we present a slide later on, taken directly from the Laser 2024 LCOE report to give you the preview of the findings, I highly encourage you to delve deeper into these resources. It offers comprehensive insights into the economics of power generation. You can access the full report by scanning the QR code displayed here, which will direct you to their website. So let's begin with the slide showing the differences in cost between renewable energy and the traditional fossil fuel generations, specifically in scenario where no government subsidy are considered. As we can see in this slide, in certain conditions, selected renewable energy technologies are cost competitive with conventional generation methods. From the LCOE data presented, it is clear that rooftop solar panel exhibit the highest LCOE among the renewable options, with the widest range of uncertainty. This variability is primarily due to the labor cost associated with the installations. Approximately 2/3 of the cost of a rooftop solar installation is derived from the installation itself, while the cost of a solar panel is relatively lower. As a result, utility-scale solar power tends to be more cost-effective. As shown in this slide, utility-scale solar PV is significantly less expensive than rooftop residential solar, with an LCOE of only $29 per megawatt-hour compared to $284 per megawatt-hour for the latter. These stark contrasts highlight the economies of scales achieved in utility-scale projects. Similarly, wind energy, particularly onshore wind, remain highly competitive with an LCOE of $27 per megawatt-hour, which is among the lowest for renewable technologies. Even when combined with the storage solution, onshore wind maintains a competitive edge at $45 per megawatt-hour. On the other hand, traditional energy sources like coal, gas has their cost too. Notably, gas combined cycle plants has an LCOE starting as low as $30 per megawatt-hour, making them one of the more competitive fossil fuel technologies in the absence of subsidies. You may wonder why LCOE varies so much across the different energy technology. The LCOE is a metric that factors in both engineering and economic assumptions, which directly influence the calculation. For engineering assumptions, these include the initial cost of setting up a power plant and the expected output over the lifetime. These parameters are crucial because they impact the overall calculation of how much it costs to generate each unit of electricity. For economic assumptions, these are equally vital and include the discount rate, which affect how future costs are valued in today's terms, the time horizon over which the cost and output are assessed, and the future input costs such as the fuel and the maintenance. Furthermore, external factors like subsidy, taxes, and the regulations can also significantly change the LCOE, making it a dynamic and a context-sensitive measure. So why are LCOE so variable, especially from the policy perspective? LCOE enable policymakers, analysts, to compare the long-term economic viability of various energy technologies on a comparable basis. This is crucial for making the decision about where to allocate resources and which technology to promote. By focusing on technologies with a lower LCOE, governments can prioritize investment that offer a greater efficiency and a lower cost over the long term, ensuring that sustainable energy solutions are not only viable but also economically competitive. In today's discussion on the LCOE, it is important to recognize the limitation, particularly when it comes to the renewable energy sources. One significant challenge is the issue of intermittency. Renewable energy sources like solar and wind are inherently intermittent. The phrase solar by day, wind by night is optimistic but does not hold true every day of the year because of the changing weather condition and the daily cycle. Such intermittent nature of the solar and the wind energy will increase the need for ancillary service. These include the backup power plants and energy storage system that can quickly compensate for when the sun does not shine or the wind does not blow. However, conventional LCOE calculations do not always factor in the cost of these services. This can lead to an underestimation of the true cost of maintaining a stable and reliable power system with the high penetration of renewable energy. As a result, renewable can appear less cost-effective than they truly are when compared to the more consistent energy sources like coal or nuclear, which do not face such variability in production. Another challenge with using the LCOE is that it does not account for the fluctuating values of electricity, which varies by time of day and month. This oversight can significantly affect the accuracy of LCOE calculation. Electricity generated during the peak demand hours, such as the late afternoon on a hot day, is far more variable than electricity generated during the off-peak hour, like the middle of the night. However, LCOE calculations traditionally ignore this variation, assessing cost uniformly regardless of when electricity is produced or its market price at that time. A possible solution to this problem could be to weight the output by the price of electricity, introducing the concept known as the levelized value of energy, or LVOE. So the equation here shows how this works. We multiply the quantity by price, PT, in the denominator. And the PT represents the price of the electricity at the time it generated. By incorporating PT into an equation, LVOE not only accounts for the cost of generating electricity, but also the market value, reflecting the social value of electricity generation. And if the LVOE is less than 1, it indicates a variable investment opportunity, because the revenue are expected to be greater than the cost. This makes LVOE a potentially more useful metric for policymakers and investors, because it provides a clear picture of economic viability by aligning the cost with the actual economic value generated at different times. The third challenge with LCOE concerns the geographic distribution of the power generation. In other words, where is the generation? Renewable energy sources such as wind and solar often face a significant challenge. They are not always located near the areas of the highest electricity demand. For example, large wind farms tend to be situated in remote areas where the wind is plentiful but far from the urban centers, where electricity is most needed. This geographic mismatch introduces the additional costs for transmission and distribution, which are not typically included in the standard LCOE calculation. Including these costs would provide a more accurate depiction of the economic viability of deploying renewable energy technology across the long distance. The fourth challenge is the externalities not being accounted for in LCOE basic calculation. LCOE generally excludes the external cost and the benefit associated with the electricity production, such as the environmental impacts, public health effects, and other social costs or benefit. For the more holistic assessment of energy cost, some experts suggest using the levelized social cost of electricity, or LSCOE, which incorporates externalities into the LCOE framework. By adding an externality factors to the cost in the numerator, LSCOE aims to reflect the true societal cost of electricity production, therefore aiding the policymakers and stakeholders in making more informed decisions that consider both economic and the social impact. So, okay, that wraps up our exploration of the LCOE as a green engineering application of economic feasibility assessment. We have dissected the economic feasibility of the different energy sources, addressing how renewable energy stack up against traditional fossil fuels in economic terms. Again, our goal is to not just assess cost, but also to understand the broader impact of energy production on our environment and the society. I hope this has provided you with a clear understanding of how economic tools like LCOE can inform and support the transition to a greener future. See you. Bye bye.